You now are listening to the audio podcast of Prisoners of Hope, the antidote to what ails your heart. I'm your host, Dr. Deborah Whitson. So come on in, pull up a chair, and open up your mind as you get ready to receive the download that hope will bring. Well, hey. This is Dr. D coming at you, and welcome to the podcast, Prisoners of Hope. And today, this particular episode is called The Basement. And I don't want to take credit for this title myself. I actually heard an interview with David Nunez Rodriguez, and he is a heavyweight boxer. And he was talking about, he actually made this quote. He said, "When I hit rock bottom, I didn't know rock bottom had a basement." That was so profound to me because David was saying in this interview, in which he talked about the trials and tribulations and the struggle that he had gone through in his life, that you can go further down than rock bottom. Wow. Can you relate? I know I can relate. Today, in part one of this series, we're going to talk about the characteristics of basement experiences. In part two of this series, we will examine strategies to help you deal with your mindset as you proceed through these basement experiences in your life, which are dark times. So, we're going to talk about the dark times. We're going to talk about the characteristics of the dark times in part one of this series. And in part two, we're going to skip over to what are some strategies we could use when these times come upon us. So stay tuned, buckle your seatbelts. Let's get started. Well, here we go. We're going to talk about the characteristics of the basement. So you're not surprised once you get there what it looks like, okay? One of the first characteristics I want to talk about is feelings are raw. Your feelings are very raw in the basement. And remember, the basement is below rock bottom. Your feelings are very raw. You know, raw feelings are powerful and difficult to control. You show the blunt, unedited version of your personality when this is happening. There are no filters on your thoughts. They just come out raw. There's no effort to be tactful about the way you speak, no sugarcoating to sweeten the impact of the interaction on others, nor yourself. You don't even sugarcoat your thoughts for yourself. You don't even do that. Feelings are very rock bottom. They're very raw in the basement. The next thing I want to talk about, characteristic of the basement, is you feel very depleted and you feel broken. So depletion and brokenness is a characteristic of the basement. Raw feelings like anger and confusion, shock and desperation, and sadness can lead you depleted, even broken and tired. You have nothing else to give. Okay. And from that, we will seek isolation. A lot of times we seek isolation. And isolation, we tend to seek out isolated surroundings. We don't want to be around anybody. We want to be by ourselves. We want to separate. We want to segregate. We want to set ourselves apart and keep ourselves apart from others. Especially want to keep ourselves from others who can possibly help us think clearly. It is a self imposed quarantine. You avoid social interactions. So the basement is a very lonely place. You even avoid those social reactions in the past that you have found to be enjoyable. You don't even want to do that. The devil does his best work in isolation because clear thinking does not come from isolated surroundings. Prolonged social isolation can lead to a broad array of behavior changes. Did you hear that? They've actually done research on rats and found out that their behavior and their patterns in their mind and their physiological makeup chemical of the brain actually changes. Um, what are some behavioral patterns? Um, Increase aggressiveness. That can come from being isolated toward the unfamiliar. We tend to have a lot of fear in the basement, and we're hypersensitive to threatening stimuli. In other words, threatening things we seem is more threatening than they actually are. We intensify everything. Isolation can in turn lead to irrational thought patterns. These patterns become circular. Do you know what I'm talking about? They begin to feed on themselves, cannibalizing any irrational solutions to our current situation. It locks your brain away from possible solutions. And if you're on YouTube, there's a great graphic of a prison, and the brain is locked outside of the prison, and the prison contains the solution to your problems, but the brain is locked outside of that. Another characteristic of the basement is unclear vision. Okay, unclear vision. The basement is a place that is dark, is a place where you can't see clear. It impedes clear vision. Things appear different from reality in the basement. Pathways that appear to lead out lead to darkness, dead ends. You know what I'm talking about? Pathways that appear to be obstructed lead to light. You can't trust your sight. Doesn't the Bible say something about we don't walk by sight, but we walk by faith? So there's a summary of some of the characteristics of the basement. Feelings are raw, you can't trust them. Isolation is all around you. You can't trust what you're thinking. You are depleted, you're broken, you have no energy, you have thoughts that don't make any sense, and your vision is not clear. These are all the characteristics of below rock bottom, the basement. So these below rock bottom experiences, better known as basement experiences, they can leave you weak. They can zap your energy. So what happens when you're real weak? Well, things don't appear to be the way they are. Have you looked in the mirror and it said objects appear closer than what they are? That's a warning for a basement experience. Objects appear not to be what they are. They leave you weak. I used to watch a cartoon when I was a kid called, I think it was called Mighty Dog, or it might have been called Under. I think it was called Mighty Dog, and it says, "Have no fear, Underdog." I think it was called Underdog. I'm trying to remember. Underdog is here. Mighty Dog is here. You don't have to fear basement experiences because there is help. Don't be afraid, there is help. The strength that God will provide you in our weaknesses is much greater than the strength that we can muster on our own. I'm going to say that again. The strength that God will provide you during your basement experiences is much stronger, greater than what you can muster for yourself. So, we should not try to hide or avoid weaknesses, but rather embrace them, allowing God to strengthen you in ways that you could never imagine, more than you can ever imagine. In part two of this series, we'll explore ways that God uses basement experiences to strengthen you. 2 Corinthians 12:19 basically says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. I have an image of this. It's like having a rope with knots on it. And when you are about ready to fall off the rope and you've tied your last knot of hope, God becomes strong at the end of yourself. That's where you find the strength of the Lord. So tune in next week when we will go over some strategies that you can use in these basement experiences that you're going to have. God promises that you will have trouble. And don't fear. Underdog is here. I think it was Underdog. He is there to help you. And next episode, part two, we will discover some things that God can reveal during your basement experience. Well, tune in next week, and God bless. Until next time. My hope is that this journey has been fruitful and you're able to take it and apply it to your life. Until next time, tune in again for the Prisoners of Hope podcast. God bless.